Hello everyone and welcome back to another War Thunder video. Today I thought I'd try to reboot a series I had years ago on my channel. In that series I played each of the Tigers one after the other in videos to see which was the best. And although I never quite finished it, I've always liked the concept. For this new version I want to streamline it further, so instead of doing multiple videos, I'll be combining all the tanks I'm comparing into one video for your viewing pleasure. And I'll be basing my ratings off of a 5-category system, similar to what Clint's Reptiles does if you've ever seen any of his videos. And I'll be walking you through those categories right after a word from today's sponsor, The Coldest Water. The Coldest Water promises to be the last water bottle you ever need to buy. They sent me one of their products to try out myself and I've been loving it. It's super great for me to use at work since I can fill it up in the morning and throughout the day my drink stays just as cold as when I filled the bottle. I highly recommend giving them a try. And if you aren't completely satisfied, you can send it back within the first year for a full refund, so there's absolutely no risk. And if you use the link below and use code CONE at checkout, you can get 10% off. They also gave me a link to a weekly free giveaway you can enter, which I'll also include in the description. Please consider checking them out, as sponsors like this help support the channel immensely. Now let's get into the tank reviews. And we'll start with what those 5 categories for my review will be based on. These are ease of play, lineups, survivability, availability, and cost. Since this is the first video in what could become a full series, I'll quickly explain what all of these mean. Lineups are quite simple and will be based on how good the surrounding lineup of tanks will be to back up the tank. Survivability refers to how well it can take damage on the battlefield without being knocked out. Ease of play is how simple it is for a new or less experienced player to pick up the tank and do reasonably well. Availability is how accessible the tank is for the average player, and cost is obviously how much the tank will cost you to get. As I'm sure you already gathered from the thumbnail and title of this video, we'll be starting with the Israeli tanks. The vehicles we'll be looking at today are the M4A4 SA50, the Shutkal Dallet, Magok 3, and the Merkava's Mark 1, 2, and 3. Without further ado, let's get started with the M4 SA50. This tank sits at a battle rating of 4.7 in the French tree and features the most powerful gun at its battle rating, with only the 17-pounder coming close to its performance. This, coupled with the good mobility the tank has, easily earn it a 4 out of 5 in ease of play, with only the lack of explosive filler on its shells and reload holding it back. The M4 suffers a bit in the second category, however, earning only a 2 out of 5 for its lineup. With the addition of the very strong M4A1 FL10, you can make a great lineup, but since that is a premium, I can't include it in my rating, and with only the AMX13 DCA at 4.7, you suffer from a lack of backups for the M4A4 SA50. Up next is survivability. For this, I give the M4A4 a rating of 4 out of 5. Although its armor isn't the strongest at its battle rating, if used properly, this tank can be extremely good at taking hits. This is partly thanks to the strange shaping of the mantlet, which has a tendency to block shots. The crew of 5 also increases the chance of surviving a hit without taking a massive dip in the vehicle's abilities. For both availability and cost, this tank earns a perfect score of 5 out of 5 since it's freely available in the tech tree. This brings the M4A4 SA50's total score to 4 out of 5. Let's see if the Shutkal Dallet can top this score. The Shutkal Dallet sits at a battle rating of 8.3 in the British tech tree. This tank suffers a bit from below average mobility for its tier, but also features a completely stabilized gun capable of firing APFSDS. Despite this, I give the Shutkal a slightly lower score of 3 out of 5, since the sluggishness makes it a bit less competitive than other tanks at its BR range. As for its lineup, it makes up some ground, earning itself a 5 out of 5, with 2 chieftains, the striker, Ruakit, and chieftain marksman, as well as the warrior if you choose to add it. You have a strong lineup with a good amount of flexibility, meaning you can keep on fighting even if you die a few times, which makes this machine perform better on average. As for its survivability, you have a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, it features ERA bricks and a bit of add-on frontal armor, which can greatly reduce the effects of heat rounds. But on the other hand, this is all strapped onto a mostly unchanged Centurion, which lowers its overall survivability to a 2 out of 5. With 3 of the 4 crew members in the turret, this also puts you at risk of being one-shot frequently, even when hull down. For availability, the Shutkal earns itself a 5 out of 5, being available for purchase on the Gaijin store with no limitation. As for the final rating of cost, this is where it gets hit the hardest. With a price of $60, I have to give this tank a 1 out of 5, as it is incredibly pricey and also has competition with the much faster and similarly armed premium Ruakit, which features the same price. This brings the total score to 3.2 out of 5. Up next, let's take a look at the Magok 3. Sitting at a battle rating of 7.7 in the American tree, this modified M48 earns itself a quick boost by getting a 5 out of 5 for ease of play. I do love the M48s, but this is not down to me being biased towards this machine, as its firepower, mobility, and armor make it a perfect jack of all trades, allowing it to quickly be picked up by any player who might play it. The tank also sits in an amazing lineup with plenty of backups to choose from, earning it yet another 5 out of 5. As for its survivability, the good news continues for the Magok, since it features ERA like the Shutkal, but at almost a full BR below it. With heat being much more common at 7.7, this means the ERA is even more useful. However, since it does have some relatively easy to hit weak spots like the lower plate, I'll knock off 1 point, giving it a total of 4 out of 5. One more thing about its survivability, however, is the fact that the large cupola on the roof is removed, which eliminates one of the major weak spots of the M48. Our next category is once again availability, which the Magok easily scores a 5 out of 5 on being readily available for purchase on the store. Last but not least, we reach the cost section. Unfortunately for the Magok, this is also where its score takes a big hit. With the total price of $50, this tank earns itself only a 2 out of 5, just beating the Shutkal. Despite this, the Magok still comes out with a total score of 4.2, just barely scraping past the SA-50 to take the lead. Can it stack up to the 3 fully Israeli-built opponents though? Let's take a look at the 3 Merkavas now, starting with the Mark I. Sitting at a battle rating of 8.7, the Merkava Mark I struggles to keep up with other tanks, being much slower than many of the opposition. Although it does get the same gun and ammo the Shutkal gets, meaning it only really lags behind in mobility. This does still knock its score down a bit to 3 out of 5. Unfortunately, its lineup doesn't help out much, with the American 8.7 lineup largely being a ghost town with only a few backups, of which most underperform the vehicles of other nations. This results in a score of 2 out of 5 for the tank. When it comes to survivability, the Merkava starts to make up for its lackluster speed and lineup. Although its armor isn't the thickest, the shaping and placement of internal components make it much stronger to both heat and APFSDS than most tanks at its tier. From my experiences with this tank, you can usually take a great deal of punishment before being knocked out with good positioning, especially playing hull down, and you will rarely be one shot. This earns the Merkava an excellent 4 out of 5 for survivability. This good rating does not continue into its availability though, and the Merkava Mark I is the first on our list to earn lower than a perfect score. With only a handful left on the market, this tank earns a tragic score of 1 out of 5. This 1 out of 5 score carries over to the cost category as well, with the cheapest one at the time I'm making this costing an absurd 106 Gaijin coins. This brings the Merkava Mark I's total score to only 2.2 out of 5. Does the improved Mark IIB improve on this score though? Let's take a look. Being only a slight improvement over the first Merkava, the Mark IIB features a slightly more powerful engine and transmission, making it have slightly better mobility. Its armament doesn't change, but it does get the addition of some thermals, which earn it a 4 out of 5 for ease of play. At 9.0, the tank also gets a slightly better lineup. It can still use the vehicles from the 8.7 lineup, but now gets access to the 3 9.0 vehicles to fill out the ranks. This earns it a 4 out of 5. As for its survivability, the Mark IIB is equipped with some increased composite armor, which I detailed in my review of the tank when it was released. This armor helps slightly improve the durability of this machine, but as it only makes a slight difference, the 4 out of 5 rating the Mark I also earned remains for the Mark IIB. In terms of availability, the story is only slightly better than the Mark I, with just under 200 currently on sale on the market. This gives it a 2 out of 5, but its score nosedives when we consider the cost it has of around 70 Gaijin coins, earning it only 1 out of 5. This brings its total score to 3 out of 5. And last but certainly not least, how does the Merkava Mark IIID stand up to our categories? With a battle rating of 10.0, this tank receives a good boost in mobility compared to the earlier variants, putting it on par with the other 10.0s, although still not quite as good as them. Its firepower puts it at the top though, with it receiving a 120mm cannon capable of firing some of the most powerful APFSDS rounds in the game. Couple this with its improved thermals, and it earns a solid 4 out of 5 for ease of play, being only held back by its subpar reload. Its lineup is also excellent, suffering none of the issues the previous Merkavas have. These include the HSTVL and the 2 105mm armed Abrams. This earns it a 4 out of 5 like the Mark IIB. When it comes to survivability, this machine receives a massive improvement over the previous models, with large amounts of spaced armor and composite added to the tank. Thanks to this and the frontal fuel tank being an external one which will self-extinguish itself without using your FPE, this earns the Mark IIID a 5 out of 5, being one of the most survivable tanks in its lineup. The Merkava Mark 3D is also more readily available than the previous two models, with over 500 for sale currently, earning it a 3 out of 5. However, once again, its cost hinders it with the price exceeding 80 Gaijin coins, which only gets it a 1 out of 5. This brings the total score to 3.4 out of 5. With that final score tallied, this ranks the best Israeli tank according to the 5 categories I listed as the Magok 3, followed by the M4A4 SA50, then the Merkava Mark 3D in 3rd place. Thanks once again to the Coldest Water for helping make this video possible. Be sure to check out their website using the link in the description and sign up for their free giveaway that they run every week. Don't forget to use the code CONE at checkout to help support more videos on my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments down below. If you think I could improve on the categories, leave your suggestions down below, as well as letting me know if you agree with me on my ratings, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Regardless, I wish you good luck and hope to see you in my future videos.